What did Bertrand Russell think about Buddhism? My reason says that Gautam Buddha is certainly the greatest figure in the whole of human history. But although I am not part of any Christian congregation, although I have completely disassociated myself from Christian mythology, religion, theology, somewhere I cannot put Buddha above Christ. With my reason I understand, but as far as my feelings are concerned, Jesus remains higher, and I know he is not. Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell, a towering figure of the 20th century, was renowned not only for his contributions to logic and analytic philosophy, but also for his profound insights into society, ethics, and religion. His intellectual journey, marked by relentless questioning and a deep-seated skepticism of absolute truths, shaped a legacy that has invited both admiration and controversy. Russell's ideas stretched across a vast spectrum of topics, yet his thoughts on religion, particularly his critiques and comparisons between Western religions and Eastern philosophies, offer a fascinating glimpse into his philosophical evolution. Today's podcast episode aims to delve into Bertrand Russell's religious viewpoints with a specific focus on his reflections regarding Buddhism. It explores the alignment and contrast between his lifelong skepticism towards traditional Western religious doctrines and his intellectual appreciation for Buddhist principles. As we navigate through Russell's philosophical inquiries and personal confessions, we uncover the nuanced ways in which Buddhist thought resonated with him, highlighting a unique philosophical kinship that transcended his usual critical disposition towards religion. Russell's engagement with Buddhism is not widely documented compared to his critiques of Christianity and Western metaphysics. However, key moments and writings provide significant insights. Through his essays and personal reflections, Russell acknowledged the moral and philosophical depths of Buddhism, praising its ethical framework and its approach to suffering and attachment. His famous work, Why I Am Not a Christian, lays the groundwork for understanding his disenchantment with organized religion and sets the stage for his affinity towards Buddhism's practical and non-dogmatic approach. In this exploration, we will trace Russell's theoretical alignment with Buddhist ideas against the backdrop of his broader philosophical undertakings and personal struggles with faith and reason. By juxtaposing his theoretical endorsements and personal inclinations, we aim to present a comprehensive view of how one of the greatest philosophers of the modern era navigated the complex landscape of religion and spirituality. This article not only revisits Russell's philosophical discourse on religion, but also enriches our understanding of how Eastern philosophy influenced Western intellectual thought through the lens of a profoundly impactful thinker. Chapter 1. The Development of Russell's Religious Thought. Bertrand Russell's early engagement with religion was both profound and complex, beginning in his formative years. The seeds of his philosophical inquiries into religion were sown during his adolescence when he started recording his thoughts in a secret diary using a code based on Greek letters and phonetics. This practice reflected both the depth of his contemplation and his need for privacy, perhaps due to the fear of ridicule or misunderstanding by his peers and family. In these early writings, Russell grappled with the ethical and theological concepts that would later define much of his philosophical legacy. The influence of John Stuart Mill on Russell's thought cannot be overstated. Mill's utilitarianism, which posits that the best action is the one that maximizes utility, primarily defined as the promotion of happiness and reduction of suffering, had a significant impact on Russell. This philosophical foundation led Russell to question conventional religious beliefs, including the doctrines of free will and immortality. Mill's criticism of the traditional proofs of God's existence, especially the first cause argument, which suggests that there must be an initial cause, or God, for everything that exists, particularly resonated with Russell. In his diary, he wrestled with these concepts, writing, "The first cause argument seemed irrefutable at first, but under the scrutiny of Mill's logic it crumbled. Who indeed made God?" Russell's time at Cambridge was a period of intense intellectual development and further questioning. Influenced by his mentors and the prevailing philosophical attitudes, his views began to shift dramatically. Initially drawn to the arguments of J.M.E. McTaggart, a Hegelian philosopher who believed in personal immortality despite his atheism, Russell found himself at philosophical crossroads. The transition from Hegel's absolute idealism to the more empirical and skeptical approaches advocated by G.E. Moore marked a critical pivot in his philosophical orientation. Moore's emphasis on common sense and ordinary language philosophy helped Russell shed the remnants of his religious belief, moving towards a more empirical and analytic approach to philosophical questions. This philosophical evolution is evident in Russell's increasing criticism of organized religion. His disillusionment with the Christian doctrines of his upbringing became more pronounced, reflecting his growing commitment to empirical evidence and logical rigor. He famously declared in later writings that his study of philosophy had led him to abandon any belief in God or immortality, stating, "I came to realize that the more one analyzes traditional arguments for the existence of God, the more one realizes their failure to hold up under close scrutiny." Russell's journey through the landscapes of philosophy and theology during his Cambridge years not only shaped his subsequent intellectual endeavors, but also laid the groundwork for his later works, where he would more explicitly critique religion and propose alternatives rooted in logic and humanism. Through these transformative years, Russell's thoughts on religion matured from doctrinal adherence to a rigorous, skeptical inquiry into the nature and utility of religious belief, setting the stage for his later philosophical and public engagements with theism and the broader spectrum of spiritual and moral philosophy. Chapter 2: Russell and Buddhism. Convergences in Ethics and Science. Bertrand Russell's exploration of various religious philosophies brought him to a respectful and detailed examination of Buddhism, particularly its ethical teachings and its compatibility with modern scientific thought. This analysis of Buddhism through the lenses of ethics and science reveals how Russell found profound connections between his philosophical skepticism and the practical, often secular approach of Buddhist doctrine. Ethical convergences. Russell's philosophical work often gravitated towards an ethical understanding of human behavior, one that challenges the intrinsic authority of religious dogma. In his essay, Why I Am Not a Christian, Russell criticized Christian doctrines not for their moral messages, but for their reliance on an unprovable divine authority. He found that Buddhist ethics, which emphasize personal enlightenment and the reduction of suffering, resonated more closely with his own utilitarian impulses, which favored actions that promote human happiness and minimize pain. One of Russell's most notable appreciations of Buddhism was its principle of the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. He saw this as a practical application of ethical philosophy, one that aims to achieve a balanced life by recognizing the impermanence of pleasure and the inevitability of suffering. Russell argued in various works that a life led by reason and moderation was essential for personal peace and societal health, a view deeply aligned with Buddhist teachings, science, and Buddhist concepts of mind and time. Russell was particularly interested in how Buddhism conceptualizes the mind and time, areas where he found Buddhism to be surprisingly compatible with contemporary scientific and philosophical views. In his writings, he often discussed the concept of mind as an array of impressions and experiences without any permanent essence, an idea that aligns closely with the Buddhist notion of anatta, non-self. In The Analysis of Mind, Russell explores the fluidity of consciousness in ways that echo the Buddhist rejection of a permanent, unchanging self. He stated, "What we call a mind is nothing but a heap or collection of different perceptions, united together by certain relations, and supposed, though falsely, to be endowed with a perfect simplicity and identity." This perspective mirrors the Buddhist teaching that the self is an illusion, merely a convenient label for a collection of sensory experiences and thoughts that are in constant flux. Russell's interest in time also paralleled significant Buddhist concepts. He recognized time as a construct that helps order experiences, but questioned its independent existence outside human perception, similar to the Buddhist view of time as not absolute but dependent on conditions. In his discussions, Russell often referred to the Buddhist understanding of impermanence, where all conditioned phenomena are in a constant state of flux, emphasizing that understanding this impermanence is key to reducing human suffering. Compatibility with atheism and nonviolence. One of Russell's most profound connections with Buddhism was its compatibility with atheism. Buddhism's lack of an omnipotent creator God and its focus on ethical living and psychological insight without recourse to divine intervention appealed to Russell's secular outlook. In his later years, Russell frequently praised Buddhism for not enforcing a belief in a God as a requirement for its ethical and spiritual path, seeing this as a model for a rational, compassionate, and non-dogmatic approach to spirituality. Moreover, Russell admired Buddhism's inherent non-violence. In contrast to the histories of other major religions, which were often marked by periods of violence and coercion, Buddhism's commitment to ahimsa, non-harm, and its avoidance of proselytization through force presented a model of peaceful religious practice that Russell found deeply ethical and rationally commendable. In summary, Bertrand Russell's examination of Buddhism through ethical, scientific, and philosophical lenses highlighted significant alignments that not only enriched his own worldview, but also offered a bridge between Eastern and Western modes of thought. His writings and reflections on Buddhism show a clear respect for its practical approach to ethical problems, its psychological insights, and its accommodating stance towards non-theistic beliefs. Russell's dialogues with Buddhist concepts underscored his lifelong commitment to understanding human nature and the universe through reason, experience, and compassionate inquiry, marking him as a thinker genuinely ahead of his time in recognizing the value of integrating diverse philosophical traditions. Chapter 3: Religion, Science, and Ethics in the Thought of Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell's philosophical journey was deeply intertwined with his critiques of religion, particularly the traditional concepts of God and immortality, which he believed were not necessary for moral conduct. His views on these subjects were shaped by a rigorous commitment to logic and empirical evidence, reflecting a broader skepticism about the veracity of religious claims that lacked scientific backing, the unnecessity of belief in God for morality. Russell famously argued that ethical behavior does not require belief in God or an afterlife. In his essay, Why I Am Not a Christian, he posited that religion does not have a monopoly on moral values. Instead, morality can be secular and derive from humanistic and rational principles. He stated, "I do not believe that any type of religion will prove itself so necessary to the prosperity of mankind as to survive without the support of dogma and mystery." This reflects his conviction that human beings are capable of ethical conduct based solely on their rational understanding of the consequences of their actions, rather than through divine command. Scientific inquiry and the existence of God. Russell was critical of the arguments traditionally used to justify the existence of God, such as the first cause argument, which he dismissed for its circular reasoning. His approach to these theological questions was deeply scientific, demanding observable evidence and logical coherence. In The Scientific Outlook, Russell explored how modern science challenges theistic claims, particularly through advancements that explain natural phenomena without needing to invoke a deity. He argued that the more science advances, the less room there is for religious explanations of the universe that rely on supernatural causes. Russell was particularly intrigued by the implications of quantum mechanics and general relativity, which transformed our understanding of the cosmos and introduced uncertainty at a fundamental level of physics. He noted that these scientific developments do not support the traditional attributes ascribed to God, such as omnipotence and omniscience, because they suggest a universe governed by probabilistic laws rather than deterministic divine will. Logical refutations of cosmic purpose in the soul. One of Russell's significant contributions to philosophy and theology was his critique of the concept of cosmic purpose. He challenged the notion that the universe has a purposeful direction orchestrated by a divine entity. In his discussions, Russell often highlighted the problem of evil and suffering, questioning how an all-powerful and benevolent God could allow such phenomena. He used logical arguments to demonstrate that the presence of inherent suffering and chaos in the world is more consistent with a naturalistic view of the universe devoid of any moral purpose. Additionally, Russell addressed the belief in the soul's existence, which is often cited as evidence of divine creation and immortality. In his writings, he argued that the concept of the soul lacks empirical support and is philosophically redundant. He pointed out that all functions attributed to the soul can be explained through the workings of the brain and the nervous system. By dismantling the need for a soul to explain consciousness and personal identity, Russell further undermined the traditional religious view that human beings are fundamentally different from other entities in the natural world. Bertrand Russell's examination of religion through the lens of science and logic led him to advocate for a worldview that values empirical knowledge and rational thought over religious dogma. His philosophical inquiries into the nature of God, the universe, and the human soul showcased his commitment to a form of intellectual integrity that refuses to accept easy answers or unverified claims. Russell's legacy in this area is a potent reminder of the power of critical thinking and the importance of questioning even the most deeply held beliefs. Through his rigorous analysis of theological and metaphysical claims, Russell provided a framework for understanding religion and ethics in a modern, scientific context, encouraging future generations to seek truths grounded in reason and observable reality. Chapter 4. Suffering and Desire, Sin and Guilt. In his book, The Perennial Philosophy, Aldous Huxley considers all the higher religions as linked by what he calls the unitive knowledge of God. He points out that it is the absence of God and the assertion of the ego which creates the suffering that is common to all humanity. In making this point, he cites many sources, including Catherine of Siena, Meister Eckhart, and Saint Philip Neri. His own incisive analysis is equally revealing. He describes suffering as the result of the urge to separateness or craving for independent and individual existence. He then says that this craving for an individualized existence can manifest itself on all levels, from the merely cellular to the fully conscious. In the first case, he speaks of impulse, passion, desire, self-will, sin. In the second, he describes what is happening as illness, injury, functional and organic disorder. In both cases, the craving for separateness results in suffering, not only for the craver, but also for the craver's sentient environment, other organisms in the external world, or other organs within the same organism. Christianity has produced the devil to account for this seduction. Buddhism says that it is simply deluded desire rooted in ignorance. The Buddhist conception of craving and the results of craving are not confined to a world where goodness on the one side is opposed to evil on the other. Valuable as such a split would be, it is nevertheless like the imaginary lines of latitude and longitude on a globe, useful in the matter of orientation, but with no real existence. Sin and Guilt. In January 1948, Horizon published a paper carrying the views of Russell on sin. In it, Russell states that many psychoanalysts equate sin with guilt, which they believe is innate. Russell disagrees, believing that the origin of the sense of guilt in the young to be fear of punishment or disapproval by parents or whoever is in authority. It was Russell's belief that in order for guilt to result from punishment or disapproval, it is necessary that authority is to be respected. Russell is quick to point out that many people who do not believe in God, nevertheless, have a sense of sin. Sin, as originally conceived, was merely something forbidden. Sin in archaic times, ancient Judea, changed from collective punishment to individual punishment. Sin for the individual involves humility, whereas sin for our enemies involves pride. The extreme of humility is to be found in original sin. According to this doctrine, Adam and Eve were created with free will and chose to eat the apple, which means that they chose evil, thereby corrupting their souls. From that moment, their progeny needed divine grace to guide them in living virtuously. Adam's transgression has caused us all to deserve punishment. Most people today think this is unjust. According to Russell, there are many who see no injustice when the analogy takes place in politics. According to Dr. Tennant in his book, The Concept of Sin, sin consists in acts of will that are in conscious opposition to a known moral law revealed by God. Russell states that if sin means disobedience to the known will of God, then sin is impossible for those who do not believe in God or do not think they know His will. But if sin means disobedience to the voice of conscience, then it can exist independently of theological beliefs. According to Buddhism, sin can have no substantiality, being mind-constructed. This, however, raises a problem. It must be admitted that there is a perceiving, there is suffering, there is stimulation. What then is responsible for all this? This is a dilemma of identity. Russell comes near to self-realization in the Buddhist sense. This, in fact, is the way to understanding of the nirvanic kind. In this article, I've tried to give an historical overview of the writings of Bertrand Russell on God and religion, with commentaries from a Buddhist perspective. The purpose in doing this was to show that, in his withdrawal from Christian liturgy, he used reasoning very much akin to Buddhist thinking and teachings. It must be remembered that Russell was part of a generation which looked on metaphysics with disdain. Rudolf Carnap, the American philosopher, said, "The danger lies in the deceptive character of metaphysics. It gives the illusion of knowledge without actually giving any knowledge." Another is the British philosopher A.J. Ayer, for whom every metaphysician inevitably and unwittingly writes sheer nonsense. The logical positivists spent their lives searching for truth through a mathematical formula. Russell, instead of rejecting religious teachings out of hand, puts forth his doubts by logical counter-argument. Buddhism does the same. Buddhists do not believe in a God, or a soul, or a hereafter. They do not say these things do not exist. They merely say that enlightenment is attainable through an inward view of the mind. Chapter 5. Personal Reflections and Late-Life Confessions. In the twilight of his life, Bertrand Russell offered a series of introspections and confessions that reveal the deep and sometimes conflicting emotions tied to his spiritual and philosophical convictions. His intellectual embrace of Buddhist philosophy, characterized by its rationality and ethical focus, stood in stark contrast to his lingering emotional ties to Christian figures, a dichotomy that underscores the complex interplay between cultural conditioning and personal belief. Emotional connections to Christian figures. Despite his rigorous intellectual dismissal of Christian theology, Russell confessed to an emotional affinity for the figures of Christian lore, particularly Jesus Christ. In his own words, a reflection made poignant during a discussion noted by Osho, Russell admitted, "My reason says that Gautam Buddha is certainly the greatest figure in the whole of human history, but although I am not part of any Christian congregation, although I have completely disassociated myself from Christian mythology, religion, theology, somewhere I cannot put Buddha above Christ. With my reason I understand, but as far as my feelings are concerned, Jesus remains higher, and I know he is not." This confession highlights the deep-seated struggle many face when confronting their ingrained beliefs. Russell's acknowledgement of Jesus' emotional supremacy over Buddha, despite his intellectual preference for Buddhist philosophy, illustrates the profound impact of cultural and childhood indoctrination. From a young age, Russell, like many in the West, was steeped in Christian imagery and ideals, which evidently left an indelible mark on his emotional landscape, overcoming cultural and personal conditioning. Russell's journey illuminates the challenges inherent in truly understanding and appreciating religious philosophies outside one's cultural or personal norms. His late-life reflections suggest a man caught between his intellectual rigor and the remnants of his cultural heritage, a heritage that imbued him with a subconscious preference for Christian symbols and figures. The philosopher's struggle with this dichotomy provides a valuable lesson on the difficulties of transcending cultural and personal biases. As Osho pointed out, Russell's situation exemplifies the immensely difficult nature of the return journey, the path of unlearning deeply ingrained beliefs. It highlights how intellectual acceptance and emotional acceptance can diverge, particularly when it comes to deeply personal matters such as spirituality and religion. Russell's confessions also underscore the broader philosophical and psychological challenges of confronting and potentially overcoming one's conditioning. He demonstrated through his own experience that intellectual discourse alone might not be enough to shift emotional allegiances formed in early life. This speaks to the need for a holistic approach to understanding religious and philosophical ideas, one that considers both the rational arguments and the emotional resonances they may hold. The path toward genuine understanding. To genuinely appreciate and integrate the tenets of a religious or philosophical system different from one's own, it is crucial to engage in what Russell termed patient and unprejudiced inquiry. This involves not only a thorough examination of the new system's doctrines, but also a deep introspection into why one holds their existing beliefs. Russell's life exemplifies a continuous quest for truth, driven by a desire to understand the universe and humanity's place within it, without resorting to supernatural explanations. The philosopher's late reflections and his struggle with the emotional residues of his early Christian indoctrination highlight the essential human journey towards deeper understanding and personal growth. They remind us that the path to changing deeply held beliefs is not solely one of intellectual engagement, but also of emotional reconciliation and transformation. In conclusion, Bertrand Russell's personal reflections and late-life confessions provide a poignant insight into the life of a man who tirelessly pursued knowledge and truth, yet acknowledged the enduring influence of his early religious conditioning. His journey invites us to reflect on our own beliefs, the origins of these beliefs, and the complex interplay between reason and emotion in shaping our understanding of the world. Chapter 6. Late-Life Religious Thoughts and Legacy of Bertrand Russell. As Bertrand Russell aged, his perspectives on religion continued to evolve, revealing a nuanced understanding that embraced both his staunch skepticism and a surprising personal sentimentality towards religious figures, notably Jesus Christ. This duality highlights the complexity of Russell's views towards the end of his life, where intellectual dismissal of religious dogma coexisted with an emotional appreciation for certain religious characters, personal reconciliations with religious sentiments. In his later years, Russell's writings and interviews often reflected a deep introspection on his views of religion. While he remained a firm agnostic, he expressed a nuanced perspective on Jesus Christ, not as a divine figure but as a historical one whose moral teachings he found compelling. Russell famously noted in a late interview, "I have come to think that Christ was the best and wisest of men, though I do not accept his divinity." This statement signifies a shift from his earlier, more critical views on religious figures, suggesting a personal reconciliation with the moral and ethical teachings of Christianity, independent of its supernatural aspects. This late-life acceptance did not denote a conversion, but rather an acknowledgement of the moral values embedded within some religious teachings, which he saw as universally applicable and beneficial. Russell's ability to separate moral teachings from theological dogma illustrates his intellectual flexibility and his ongoing commitment to moral philosophy. On modern thought and philosophical legacy. Russell's influence on modern philosophy and religious thought is profound and enduring. His rigorous analysis of religion through the lens of logic and empirical evidence has inspired generations of thinkers to question the foundations of their beliefs and to approach religion with a critical yet open mindset. Russell's legacy is particularly evident in contemporary debates on the role of religion in public life, where his advocacy for secularism and reason continues to resonate. Moreover, Russell's contributions to ethical philosophy and his critique of metaphysics have shaped contemporary views on moral responsibility and the nature of belief. His emphasis on skepticism, humanism, and scientific inquiry has paved the way for a more questioning and less dogmatic approach to understanding human values and the universe. His works, such as Why I Am Not a Christian and Religion and Science, continue to be pivotal readings in philosophy and theology courses around the world, challenging students and scholars alike to consider the implications of religious beliefs on moral and scientific ground. Legacy in philosophical and religious contexts. Russell's philosophical legacy transcends the boundaries of academia. His thoughts on religion and ethics have permeated into broader cultural contexts, influencing public discourse on religion, ethics, and governance. In an era where religious extremism and scientific skepticism often clash, Russell's call for a balanced approach that respects religious sentiments while advocating for rational discourse remains highly relevant. His advocacy for peace, global cooperation, and human rights, underpinned by his philosophical views, has made him a moral and ethical icon in both secular and religious studies. His life's work serves as a bridge between the often divergent worlds of science and religion, advocating for a synthesis of rational thought and ethical consideration. In summary, Bertrand Russell's late-life thoughts on religion reflect a complex interplay of skepticism and a nuanced recognition of religious ethics. His intellectual legacy, marked by a commitment to reason and humanistic values, continues to influence contemporary thought, offering a rich resource for philosophical inquiry and ethical debate. Russell's life and work exemplify the profound impact that thoughtful and critical examination of religion can have on personal beliefs and broader societal values. Chapter 7. Conclusion. Throughout his life, Bertrand Russell's intellectual journey illuminated a profound connection with Buddhist philosophy, which resonated deeply with his ideals of rational inquiry, skepticism, and an ethical framework grounded in humanism rather than divine mandate. His engagement with Buddhism, though not always the central focus of his works, highlighted his appreciation for its practical approach to the perennial questions of suffering, desire, and moral action. Russell found in Buddhism a compelling alignment with his advocacy for a philosophy that values compassion and understanding over dogmatic belief. Russell's critical approach to religion, particularly his analyses of Christianity and his explorations into Buddhist thought, underscore the importance of examining religious beliefs through the lenses of philosophy and science. His works encourage a questioning stance, a willingness to scrutinize beliefs in the light of evidence and logical coherence, which remains a cornerstone of modern secular thought and the scientific approach to understanding human nature and the universe. The legacy that Russell leaves behind is one of intellectual courage and an unwavering commitment to truth, wherever that truth may lead. By advocating for a methodology that combines ethical considerations with empirical scrutiny, Russell has provided a robust framework for future generations to engage with religious philosophies in a manner that is both respectful and rigorously critical. In an era where dialogue between differing worldviews is both increasingly vital and increasingly fraught, Russell's approach offers a blueprint for engaging with religious and philosophical ideas critically and constructively. His life's work serves as a reminder that, at the intersection of science and religion, there can be a productive dialogue, one that fosters greater understanding and cooperation in the pursuit of shared human values. In conclusion, Bertrand Russell's exploration of Buddhist and other religious philosophies through philosophical and scientific analysis continues to be a powerful influence on contemporary thought, encouraging a balanced, informed, and thoughtful examination of what we believe and why we believe it. This approach is not only a tribute to Russell's legacy, but also a vital practice for those navigating the complex interrelations of faith, reason, and ethics in the modern world.